Well, good afternoon. I think the last time that I walked into a large, dimly lit space to the sound of loud organ music, I went in single and came out married. But this is not quite such an auspicious occasion, but I have to say that in my professional life, it certainly is going to be one of the high points. And I'm very glad and honored to be chosen to be the leader of this great society for the next year. I thank you all very much for giving me that opportunity. Before we begin, I would like to say a few words about some of the people who have meant a lot to me and helped me to come to this point today. Tom Watson certainly is one of them. I've been his shadow, his second in command for about 7 years now, and have learned a great deal not only about being a good volunteer, but also about being a good person. I really appreciate Tom's mentoring of me, and Mary and I have come to be good friends with both he and Audrey in the process, and that's greatly appreciated and will follow on. There are certainly too many colleagues to mention, but you all know who you are, and I thank you also for what you've contributed to my personal and professional growth. But I want to say a few special words about the people who really have shaped my life the most, and I'm glad to have many of them here today. Actually, they're all in this photo from 1989, my Ph.D. commencement at the University of Illinois. That's what we call the Assembly Hall in the back, but it's the State Farm Center as of today. But I won't go off on how I feel about that. First of all, my father, Donald Bahnfleth, who was a presidential member in 1985-86, a role model for me in ASHRAE, also my mentor because I worked for him for 5 years. That's where I got my consulting experience. My mother, Joan, she's not here. She's been gone for quite a while. But what I learned from her was the importance of our partners in everything we do. And she was certainly a model of the partner of an ASHRAE volunteer. My wife, Mary, who was, I think, learned a lot from that example, and this is the part where I get weepy for a moment, so I did bring my hanky. Certainly without her love and support, I wouldn't be able to have done what I have done, and I thank her especially for investing so much of her time in my being an officer, because that is certainly something that comes with the territory. And finally, I want to mention the gentleman on the right in this picture, Kurt Peterson. Many of you may know Kurt as a real scholar and contributor to areas like energy simulation and load calculations. He was my doctoral advisor at the University of Illinois. He has 4 students in one generation who are ASHRAE fellows, and more importantly than that, he really convinced me to keep going with my Ph.D. at a time when I really had a lot of questions about it. I was in danger of becoming a musician. And so by getting me to stay the course and pursue my dreams, he again helped me in a very tangible way to be here today. And I'm so sorry that he passed away unexpectedly last year, but very happy that members of his family, his wife Carolyn, daughter Krista, and family CJ and Kyle are here to honor the promise to be here and share this moment with me. So, that is the past. What I would like to talk about today, however, is the future. The future of ASHRAE, our aspirations as members of this society, our aspirations as members of this industry, and as individuals. Future starts with a vision. It's a dream of what we want to be. And the point where I'd like to step off here is that we really don't need to be changing our vision all the time in ASHRAE. I went back and looked at a lot of our governing documents, and it turns out we've had a pretty good vision ever since the society was formed. If you go all the way back, the Certificate of Consolidation, which is the document that created ASHRAE out of its predecessor organizations, 1959, it says that the number one purpose of this organization is to advance the arts and sciences of heating, refrigerating, and air conditioning and ventilation, and the allied arts and sciences for the benefit of the general public. If there's anything that ASHRAE is doing now that does not fit somewhere within that definition, I would be glad to have a conversation with you afterwards. The bylaws later on added the words "and related human factors," which I think is just a clarification, and a word that didn't exist at the time has been added to our mission statement to promote a sustainable world. I think that's all very consistent. So our goal doesn't need to be to change our vision. It needs to be to realize it, to make it real. And that really is what I want to talk about with you today. A lot of visions fail. A lot of visions simply remain dreams that are never brought to reality. Why does that happen? Do we aim too high sometimes, or are we not pursuing them in the right way? Maybe that's also a cause too. And so the question for us is, are we going to have a bold vision, and are we going to actually make it real? That's our challenge this year, to think about that and to try to live it, to make the answer to that question yes. So where does the future start? The future starts right now. There's no place where we can act except in the present. So everything we do, every next action, is either taking us in the direction of our dreams or it's taking us somewhere else. We shouldn't waste the present. That's something I learned as a musician, because music all happens in the present too. You have something on the page, but it's not real until you play it, and the only time you can play it is now. So the critical question for us as ASHRAE, as an industry, as individuals in that industry, is what will that next be? We can't actually dictate the future, that would be nice, but we can shape it. We can shape it one next thing at a time if we know where we're going and if we know what the path is to get there. So to reach the future, we actually have to bring the future back to the present. The present must be influenced by the future in everything that we do. Simple and challenging formula for making things happen. It takes goals, planning, and it takes commitment. All of those individually are good things, but without all three of them, we really don't get where we want to go. Many successful people know this. I would dare say all successful people know this. Artists like Saint-Exupéry, athletes like Ikanga, famous marathoner, champion marathoner, and even management gurus like Peter Drucker, who for the ASHRAE committee folks here, I think, was the inventor of the MBO, which I won't hold against him. I learned about this myself in a different context, working with my father in a consulting firm. A lot of our work had to do with what we called utility master planning, and that was all about doing exactly what I'm talking about here today. To imagine what the future needs to be, to lay out the path to it, and then to get the client, the owner, to carry that out. And in my experience, knowing what the goal should be was actually the easiest part of the process. Laying out the path to it was a little more difficult, and the really hard part is always the commitment, buying in and actually doing it. I think that's something that's really, really essential. So let's think about how we can apply that formula to ASHRAE this year and hopefully well into the future. We'll start with the goals, and academics are always breaking things down into categories. So I take goals and I think, well, what are the buckets for goals? And I came up with our world, ourselves, and our work. Our world, what we do to make the world a better place, to serve the public good, as our governing documents say. That's obviously the primary one. Even though we may be participating in organizations like ASHRAE for our benefit, that benefit comes from our doing good and from our being servants and trying to accomplish what the world needs us to do for it to be a better place. But to do that, we need to have development of ourselves, the human resource of ASHRAE, something that Tom talked about last year. And we also need to define our work properly and have the tools to do it. So all of these things are important areas of goals, but the first one's the most important, and the second two are subsidiary. So with respect to what we want to do to promote the public good in the world, I think there are three areas that ASHRAE should be thinking about and working on. One of them is a focus on basic needs and quality of life. It's fundamental. Environmental stewardship is another important one. We have a role to play there that I'll talk about. And finally, serving all communities. When our bylaws say that we're to support the public good, I think of that as everyone. So basic needs and quality of life come down in the world of building technology to making people safe, healthy, productive, and comfortable. This is certainly something that ASHRAE has contributed to in many ways for a long time. I have to say, though, that when I listen to the messaging that comes out of ASHRAE, what people talk about at ASHRAE meetings, that isn't really the thing that we hear about today. What we hear about is energy and environment. And those are very important things, but I think it's time that we restored the proper emphasis to indoor environmental quality and the effect of what we do on the people in buildings. Bring it back to where it belongs. 30 years ago, approximately, we were a leader when we created Standard 62, when we formed our Environmental Health Committee, when we held our first IAQ conference. But I can tell you that when I travel around, I don't think that we're seen as the leading organization today, but I think we can be. I think that we can lead in doing what ASHRAE does best, which is connecting science to practice. We're the folks who get things done. We take research that may be interesting and elegant and beautiful and bring it down to the level of making things work in practice. We can educate and equip the industry in this area as we have done in others. Look at ASHRAE's publications. We have many wonderful educational programs, books, courses that deal with energy conservation, with sustainability. We can do exactly the same thing in the area of indoor environmental quality. And I don't want to forget about refrigeration here as well. There is an R in ASHRAE, and it's very important, and we tend to do the same thing to refrigeration. We think about refrigeration as something that we have to work on so that we prevent damage to the environment. But think about all the good refrigeration does, as Jim Ronvelord pointed out to us several years ago in his theme. Think of the impact of refrigeration on preventing foodborne disease, and think about how much waste occurs because we don't have refrigeration in certain parts of the world. So that continues to be a very important part of ASHRAE's mission. What are we doing this year to shape the next thing in some of these areas? Well, we are holding our 17th IAQ conference in Vancouver later this year. Very interestingly, and not coincidentally, the theme of that conference is environmental health in low-energy buildings. In 1984, the theme of the first conference was managing indoor air for health and energy conservation. So in that amount of time, we've really come full circle and back to where we started out when we first became the leaders in indoor air quality. We're having a specialty conference on IAQ and energy in Doha, Qatar next year. And the thing I'm really pleased about and happy to announce here, you'll see a press release on it soon, is that ASHRAE has decided to distribute free of charge the indoor air quality design guide that it produced with a group of collaborators and with EPA funding several years ago. A link is going to be available in the next day or so the entire guide can be downloaded, and it will be available as a resource to anyone who wants to use it to learn how to use the things that we've learned about IAQ in practice. And also, we are convening a summit of global IAQ and indoor environmental quality organizations this year to talk about how we can bring the research that's been done more into the realm of practice more rapidly, because there's a big gap there. Environmental stewardship, I don't think I need to say a lot about because we are very strong in this area and have been for some time. But our stewardship of energy, supplies, water, and the atmosphere are still important to us. It's our greatest strength today. Our energy standard, 90.1, our high-performance sustainable building standard, 189.1, our water conservation standard, 191P, our refrigeration safety standard, 15. All of these things are landmarks of our commitment to this area, and we will maintain that. ASHRAE really needs to think about serving all communities, not just the one that we happen to serve now. If we look at what ASHRAE really does around the world, we are an organization that is focused mainly on non-residential construction, mainly on construction in the developed world. So if we take residential away, that's half of the buildings, half of the energy use. If we take developing world away, we're taking away the place where most of the growth is going on in the next few years. I think that, again, we need to interpret the public as broadly as possible and reach out to those areas of practice as well. We have members everywhere around the world, and most of them live in homes, I'm pretty sure. So we need to do something in that area as well. I'm very happy to be able to continue an initiative that Tom Watson started last year to look more at what we can do for developing economies. And the workshop that he organized in Dallas last year, the winter meeting, is going to be followed up with a full specialty conference in Manila in 2014 on developing economies. And we will have a task force looking at other ways that we can become more involved in that area this year as well. In residential, we need to do a lot more work to become relevant in that market. We have our standard 90.2, which is working towards very ambitious goals, and standard 62.2 also. But we have a long way to go, I think, to contribute what ASHRAE is capable of contributing in that area as well. And we look forward to doing that with the many partners in the industry who are already working in that area. I think we have something to add. So that's my view of the world. What about ourselves? What are the things that we need to think about in developing human resource? Some of these relate to ASHRAE members, to our own crowd, but also to our colleagues, and especially to the next generation of professionals who will replace us when we're gone. And it won't be that long for me, I'm pretty sure. ASHRAE has struggled a little bit in recent years in tough economies to maintain the loyalty of employers. I think it's important for us to, at the grassroots and the society level, to pay attention to how we're perceived, to the value of ASHRAE, to make sure we actually have that value to offer, and to make sure that our employers recognize it and support it, because that's going to be a key to our membership going forward. We need to concentrate on leadership development, and I'm happy here to acknowledge the great success of the Leadership U program that was started when Ron Jarnigan was president. I've been so impressed with that and with the effect it's had on the people that have participated, that working together with the Young Engineers and ASHRAE Committee, we have created a parallel program called Leaders, Leadership Development through Regional Support, in which the regions will identify and support promising rising leaders to shadow their DRCs at our meetings. And we have 3 regions that have already passed motions to support that program. So very happy to see that coming. We also need to concentrate on the ability of our society to serve every member wherever they are. So creating opportunities to participate largely with electronic technology, the web, with remote meetings, as we do with some of the TCs here at this meeting, is something that we need to keep pushing, and we need to push that envelope as far as we can, because if we are going to be a truly global society, and I think that's the direction we're headed, then we're going to need to do that. A member is a member wherever they live. That's our principle. For colleagues, all of the things that we do for ourselves are equally applicable to them. All the technology products that we produce, the courses, the books, the certifications, the professional development opportunities, these are great for us as ASHRAE members, but they're also important to our industry, and we need to try to get those into as widespread use as possible. That's another way that we're going to get more members into the society as well. And then the next generation, the future workforce. I think that of all the organizations that I'm familiar with, ASHRAE is probably doing the best job with its own members of promoting that next generation. We've had great student activities programs for many years, and Young Engineers in ASHRAE has just added to that. When I travel around other organizations, they're concerned that they're graying, and they wonder how we're doing it. So this is something where we need to stay the course and try to improve those programs. But the thing I really want to talk about here is not how ASHRAE is doing, which is well, but how the rest of the world is doing in developing the future workforce, and that's not so good. ASHRAE has had a STEM emphasis for quite a while that's really been wonderful in terms of putting our volunteers into their local schools to help out with interesting young students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that continues. But I think that it's a more serious problem than that, because if the answer is that we have to go into the schools and teach, then perhaps there are problems structurally with curriculum and with policy. And so we are going to continue to work harder on addressing this problem from the policy angle as well as from the grassroots angle. We need both of it. And as a professor, I have to say, too, that I'm disappointed in the way that our industry, as important as it is supported in many parts of the world. If you look at the education that one can get to be a new employee in an industry that controls 40% of the energy use in the world, that is responsible for a commensurate part of the pollution, the environmental impact, and that has such an impact on our everyday lives because we live in the product that we produce, I don't think we're doing enough. And I think that at every level, we need to try to influence the university curriculum and make it better suited to producing the professionals that we're going to need in the future. And now to our work. A global vision. I've already laid it out there that I think that our society is going global. That's been true for a long time. We need to continue broadening our horizons, as Tom Watson asked us to do last year. And we need to emphasize partnerships, which was something that was also brought up in Ron Jarnigan's theme. So, are we really going to be global? Well, let's look at a few numbers. I don't have any charts and figures for you, but I'll give you a few simple statistics. The first ASHRAE chapters outside of North America were chartered in 1984. At that time, ASHRAE had 139 chapters. 20% of the membership was outside of the U.S. So that 20% included all of our Canadian members. Today, with 174 chapters, we have 36 outside of North America. So in all of that time, from 1984 to today, the net growth in our chapters has been 34 outside of North America, 1 net inside North America. That's where our growth has been. 20% of our members are now outside of North America, and 50% of our student members are there. So this is a constituency that we really need to look at. I think we need to examine our structure as a society and whether that is really providing the services that those members need. And in saying this, all I'm doing is telling you that we ought to do what Bill Goodman said we should do in his 1999-2000 theme, ASHRAE and the Millennium's Global Community. He said all the things I'm saying today over 10 years ago, and he was right then. He would be right now if he were here today to talk to you. By broadening our scope, if you remember what was in Tom's theme, they do fade from memory fast, and I don't expect any more for this one. But we try sometimes to paint ourselves as the HVAC in our society. And I hope that by looking at the very first definition of what we were and seeing that it's much broader than HVAC&R, suggests to us that we should take on a broader mission to accomplish the goals that we've set for ourselves, this very high purpose that we want to adopt. So how are we doing in that area? We have an effort that's been ongoing for more than a year now to bring together organizations that are involved in commissioning to try to establish some order there. Part of a new emphasis on building performance, not just on design, but on actually delivering buildings that work. Our energy labeling program, after a very difficult start, but with the benefit of a lot of hard work by many of our members, is starting to get some traction. That's also very important as we start to see energy disclosure programs developing around the country and around the world. So we need to engage members from other disciplines than just engineering and to work with them to solve the bigger problems, not just the narrow ones that we sometimes like to focus on. Partnerships are something that we have had for a long time. Our Energy Standard 90.1 has been developed in collaboration with IES. Our High Performance Sustainable Building Standard 189.1 was developed in collaboration with IES and USGBC. We can go through a whole list of things that we've done, and those partnerships have been very productive for projects. I think we can do more, and I think there are other organizations in the industry with whom we tend to have friction and controversy that we ought to be reaching out to work together. We want synergy, not competition. We should be seeking out complementary capabilities and using those to advantage to solve bigger problems than ASHRAE can solve alone. Not just projects, but programs. We want long-term relationships that really solve problems that can't be addressed by a single design guide or a single standard. That's the challenge we have in front of us. So we have been in recent years and will continue to reach out in new and different ways to some of these organizations to try to get them to collaborate with us, to maybe drop the defenses a little bit and think about what might happen if we work together instead of trying to defend our turf. I'm not saying that ASHRAE should let others run roughshod over us, but I think we'll get farther by trying to cooperate than we will by trying to defend the castle. And I also want to say here that with the initiation of our new Grassroots Government Activities Committee this year, we've taken another step towards partnership with government. The government, like it or not, is really one of our main partners, and so I view what we do in the sphere of advocacy of government activities as a very important aspect of partnership as well, not just in the U.S., but around the world. So I've spent a lot of time on goals here. They're ambitious. But I did say at the beginning that there are really three things that are essential: the goals, planning, commitment. And in planning, we've had strategic plans since the 1980s that have served ASHRAE well. We've had several of them, but strategic plans become tired over time. They lose some of their ability to inspire, and it's time for us to have a new one. And just yesterday, your outgoing board of directors voted to authorize a significant ground-up strategic planning effort this year that will look at some of these issues that I've been talking about today, as well as others. Who are our members and what are their needs? How do we structure our society to be truly global and provide our members, wherever they are, with the things that they want from us, not the things that we think they want? We will be seeking input from our members, from our committees, from our leadership, and also from outside stakeholders. We want this to truly be a strategic plan that is integrated with reality, with a business plan that works, and that will guide us over the next 10 or 15 years in the direction that we want to go. Commitment. It's the pixie dust, it's the magic, it's the secret sauce. I'm not sure exactly how to define what it is, but I know when we don't have it. A goal and a plan without commitment is a sterile thing that doesn't accomplish anything. It taunts us because we never achieve it. If you look back through what the giants here have written about what ASHRAE needs to do in the last several decades, that theme of commitment comes up quite frequently. And actually it came up in 1985-86. My father, Don Bahnfleth's theme was committed to serve, and you see one of the nice quotes from that here on the screen. What I want as an incoming president here, giving what we call the presidential theme, is for the presidential theme to be the society's theme. And I want the society's theme to be your theme. If it isn't, then I'm not sure what it's going to do for us. It's a nice thing to have at our president's luncheon, but if you don't buy it and if you don't live it, then I don't think I've accomplished what I intended to accomplish here today. We all have to be committed this year and always to following our plans, to working not only for ourselves but for the public good, to work together, and to accept occasional failures. You don't get very far in life if you don't stick your neck out far enough that you might actually have a failure sometime. So we need to be willing to do that, pick ourselves up, adjust, and move ahead. And I could give you some examples of how we've done that in recent times, but I won't right now. So the world needs our society, it really does. Needs our members, it needs our industry now as much as it ever has. I won't say more because I'm not sure about that, but as much as it ever has, we are all needed. I think that we can rise to that occasion. I think that we can meet the challenge, realize our vision, if we can connect our dreams with our plans to shape that next moment, to start today, to reach the future we envision. Let's begin now. Thank you.